This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. I have some breaking news for you. The judge for Harry's visa case has come back now with a court order. Now, as I've read through these documents, I think it's a positive step, but I do see that we have a long way to go here with this. And even though it is positive, it's like pulling teeth with these people. But let's get into these details so you understand where we are in this case. All I can say is that we are moving one step closer, but I don't think we are moving fast enough. And I do have some concerns that I will share at the very end of this video. All right, let's get down to it. Now, before we get into the actual analysis and judgment by this judge, let me summarize what the court was going through, particularly around this case. So in the 7 pages, we get a summary as to what all has been going down since March of 2023, when the Heritage Foundation had filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and their inquiry was the immigration records of Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. The foundation wanted to determine whether his admitted history of drug use had been properly vetted when he entered the United States. Now, to be clear, the defendant is the Department of Homeland Security. Even though Prince Harry is the subject of this case, Prince Harry is not directly involved, although David Sherborne had been involved talking to DHS of God knows what. But in any case, the Department of Homeland Security denied the request. In response, the Heritage Foundation took the matter to court, arguing that the American public had the right to know if an exception was made for the royal rogue, an exception that ordinary travelers might not receive. So essentially being given special privileges because of who he is. Well, the legal arguments revolved around key immigration procedures. Typically, a foreign national applying for a U.S. visa must disclose any history of drug use. The Heritage Foundation outlined several possible scenarios. Prince Harry may have sought and received a waiver, which can take years to obtain. He may have entered under diplomatic status, or he may have failed to disclose his history altogether. Now, I'm going to rule out that he didn't fill out any kind of paperwork coming into the United States, because if that was the case, then I think this outcome would have been different. So if the judge is giving the order for information to be released, it shows that there is paperwork on Harry. But who really knows? We're just going to have to wait and see. So this court case took a pivotal turn when the court ordered the government to submit classified documents for private review. Judge Carl Nichols conducted an in-camera hearing. And for those that don't know, that's a process where the court examines evidence outside public view. The government submitted declarations from multiple agencies detailing why Prince Harry's records must remain confidential. Then came down in September of 2024, the court ruled in favor of DHS, upholding the decision to withhold the records, stating that Prince Harry's privacy outweighed the public interest. The redacted option cited privacy laws and national security concerns, but the Heritage Foundation, you saw them, didn't back down. They filed a new motion arguing that at the very least, portions of the government's secretive declarations should be made public. Which brings us to the latest hearing that went down and the judge's decision. And this is what his analysis was. And I'm just going to read this last part in full so you guys can fully understand what is about to happen. So I'm going to read to you what's highlighted only in yellow. The analysis begins. Number 1, Heritage's first argument is that the court erred by not reviewing the responsive records in camera before reviewing declarations in camera. That it is generally improper for a court to review in-camera declarations from the government unless the court concludes that the public submissions, together with an in-camera review of the underlying records, are insufficient to decide the case. A court must premise the need for in-camera declarations on the initial insufficiency of its review of public materials and the relevant records in camera. In any event, to the extent the concern is about the court justifying why it ordered the review of those declarations, the court expressly finds here what it previewed at the March hearing and stated above. The declarations were necessary prerequisites to the court understanding the sealed records in the first instance, and the court properly anticipated this from the dense nature of immigration records generally, without having to physically see the specific records in question. The court thus ordered the review of in-camera declarations based on what it anticipated would be the insufficiency of its review of the underlying records themselves. No case, to the court's knowledge, holds that a court cannot presume the difficulty of reviewing records without first seeing them, which makes total sense. Bullet number 2 says, Heritage's second argument stands on firmer ground. Heritage contends that the court should have decided whether portions of those declarations could be made public in redacted form. And yay, the court agrees. Accordingly, the court orders the government, DHS, to provide it no later than February 20th, 2025, its position on whether and to what extent, 1, the declarations it provided in camera, 2, the transcript of the in-camera hearing, and I think that's supposed to be a number 3, the court's August 15, 2024 order, and or number 4, additional parts of the memorandum opinion can be redacted and made available to Heritage. Following that submission, the court will determine what portions of those materials can be produced to Heritage form, and will thereafter determine whether additional briefs are necessary or additional relief is warranted. Signed on February 13th, 2025. So here's my take on this. This has been extremely slow, and what we can see here is grinding wheels of bureaucracy turning once again. But this time, I think that there is just a glimmer of hope here. The Heritage Foundation made a solid argument. If the government insists on keeping things secret, at the very least, some of the information from these behind closed doors declarations and hearings should be made public, even in redacted form. And I think the big reason why here is for transparency purposes, or at least to portray that the government is being transparent. Now, while this is a move in the right direction, I still feel a bit skeptical about it and wonder if this was done for just pure optics, because instead of this judge just ordering the release of the information, the judge essentially is politely requesting that the government, aka DHS, be the one to tell him by February 20th what they think can be shared. And that includes the 4 items that I outlined before, the classified declarations, the transcript from the in-camera hearing that the Heritage Foundation was not a part of, then also the order that came down that had been sealed on August 15, 2024, and any other redacted snippets of the judge's ruling that the government feels comfortable letting the public see. And from there, it will now be in the judge's hands, which will probably take another couple of months, to take a look and decide what, and if anything at all, actually gets released. I feel like there's a lot of shucking and jiving going on here, almost as if they're trying to buy time until Harry's court case for this appeal and his security. It sure feels like they're doing everything possible to ensure that nothing gets released. But here we are, and now it is possible DHS could send the judge materials that just show everything redacted, except for the one question that says, did you use drugs, or, are you a drug user? Whatever it says on that form, they might redact everything and just leave out that one question to show whether or not he answered it or not. Now, as you can tell from my voice, I am a little frustrated with the argument that Heritage has put forward on this case that has now gone on for 2 years. In my opinion, this shouldn't have gone on for so long, especially to answer a simple question of whether or not Harry lied on his visa case. That was really the premise of this lawsuit with the Heritage Foundation. It was pretty much wanting to know, did Harry get special privileges above everybody else where no one should be above the law? And that's the point that Heritage Foundation wants to make here. But I do think they could have beefed this up a little bit by making it about the meddling that this guy has been involved with, not only with the Democratic Party, but also with trying to take away our First Amendment and free speech by being a part of the censorship complex. And in addition to knowing about January 6th. So if we do have a domestic threat here in the homeland attacking our Constitution, that would most certainly outweigh away Prince Harry's privacy, and the American people have the right to know. And my frustration continues to grow with Nile Gardner because he's repeatedly ignored many of us who have been telling him what Harry and Meghan have been doing, at least during the past 2 years that this lawsuit has been going on. And now all of a sudden he's popping off like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Harry and Meghan have been involved with Democratic operatives and talking about how they need to be investigated. Well, where the heck have you been for the past 4 years? This should have been nipped in the bud from the moment Harry opened up his mouth and said that he knew about January 6th. But here we are. And now we're going back and forward, and DHS is wasting our tax money in this stupid lawsuit that could have been handled better, in my opinion. But I'm not a lawyer, so my opinion really doesn't matter. But it is fascinating watching Nile Gardner have this light bulb moment as if he's discovering it on his own that Harry and Meghan have been involved in the political sense. Like, where the fuck have you been? Excuse my language, but after observing this now closely for the past 2 years, it's beginning to feel very much like this is all just theater, and they know how this is going to play out. The question that I have is, why is Nile Gardner doing an interview with Vanity Fair? Vanity Fair for the past 7 years have been pushing out the Harkle propaganda and lies. Now, all of a sudden, we're to believe that they flipped to the dark side now that there's a new administration in place? Come on. Now, I find it really hard to believe that the Heritage Foundation, as well as Nile Gardner, are completely oblivious to the nefarious things that Harry and Meghan have been up to here in the United States for the past 4 years. And the reason why I say that is because so many of you have not only contacted the Heritage Foundation, but also have tagged Nile Gardner and Heritage online. I mean, it's like thousands of you tagging and forwarding and reposting these videos. So I find it hard to believe that they don't know anything about it, but they choose to remain silent. And I'm almost wondering if they're trying to figure out, how do we protect the crown? How do we make this so this is not a diplomatic issue, because it is? And how do we make this just go away and resolve itself? I honestly feel like that's kind of where we are, but we need to continue to keep making noise because we, the people, are the ones that are in charge, at least here in the United States. And I think we also need to do a better job of not waiting until the mainstream media finally reports something in order to believe it to be true. I hope by now you have seen how the media has lied to every single one of us, not only on Meghan and Harry, but here in America with our own president. How many of these media outlets reported that Biden was mentally fit and physically fit to run for a second term? They were all on board with the narrative and they lied their faces off. And this is what I see here with Meghan and Harry. What's going on feels very, very much controlled. And that's why we have to make a lot of noise and be loud. We have to be so loud that they can't ignore us. There's so many of you that always ask me what you can do to help. I think the bare minimum, each one of you can help me out and just like this video so it does trigger the algorithm to reach more people. But if you want to do more, then share this video with just one person. And if you want to do more than that, then if you're on social media and you see conversations about Harry and Meghan's involvement with the Biden regime, as well as their involvement funding and supporting projects that support censorship, post this visual up. And if people start to ask you questions and want to engage and you can't do it, then go ahead and point them in the direction of the playlist that I've set up with almost 100 videos talking about Harry and Meghan's involvement and alignment with all these various entities. As many of you know, the heavy lifting, for the most part, is done. So these journalists, if they really want a story and they really want to make a name for themselves, I promise you that this story is bigger than whether or not Meghan used a surrogate. In my personal opinion, I think those two invisible kids are the least of their worries. In all honesty, will anybody be surprised or even care if the media starts talking about surrogacy and then revealing that Meghan did use a surrogate and now they have to be removed from the line of succession? I think all of us are going to be sitting there thinking, yeah, what took you so long? because it's something that the majority of us already know or believe. I personally think that this is far more serious because not only is this about affecting American civil liberties, but also this is about diplomatic relationships and foreign interference, which is a lot more sexy to talk about than Meghan and her wearing a moon bump, in my opinion. But we're just going to have to wait and see. In any case, what do you guys think of this judge's court order? Do you think that they're jerking us around? Do you think we'll get anything of substance back? Or you think they're going to end up protecting Harry? It really does concern me if Harry does succeed in getting this IPP status back. And the reason why I say that is because we know how Meghan and Harry love power. And we know that Harry and Meghan will abuse this power if they do indeed get this type of immunity. Now, I do believe that having IPP status not only makes them immune from being criminally prosecuted, but they also have a layer of protection in where they can have people arrested if they feel like their life is in danger. And I could honestly see that these two psychotic human beings say, well, they are saying things that's inciting people online and we feel threatened and our life is in danger. They could easily make that case. And I can see them going after their critics who do talk about them. In addition, I do believe that they do have access to intel. Not that Harry doesn't have access to intel now. I'm talking about, now don't quote me because I'm not 100% sure on this one, but being able to run background checks on people. Like, for example, if they do decide to send these invisible children to school, they could, in theory, do background checks on the families that are going to be in class with these alleged children that they have. But anyway, now is the time for us to really make noise because I believe this case that he has coming up to appeal the decision of Ravak is sometime in either March or April. So there's not a lot of time, but we need to be loud and make it known that these two will be very dangerous should they get any type of immunity. It's certainly never a dull moment, but what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I will talk to you later. Bye!
You're such a fraud.